The buzz at Madison Square Garden was different that night. You could feel it in the air, that electric anticipation that only comes before something extraordinary happens. The historic arena, which had seen countless memorable moments over the decades, was packed to the rafters for UFC 295. The usual pre-fight energy was amplified tenfold, with fans whispering and pointing their phones toward the VIP entrance. The familiar notes of Real American began blasting through the speakers, catching everyone off guard. The crowd erupted into a mix of cheers and shouts as Donald Trump emerged from behind the curtain. He walked with his characteristic confidence, each step measured and deliberate, flanked by a team of serious-faced Secret Service agents in black suits and earpieces. The former president's presence at UFC events wasn't unusual. He'd been a longtime friend of Dana White and the organization. But tonight felt different. Instead of heading to his usual ringside seat, Trump moved purposefully toward the octagon where the newly crowned champion stood waiting. The champion had just finished their post-fight interview, still gleaming with sweat under the bright lights, championship belt slung proudly over one shoulder. Their face showed a mix of surprise and curiosity as Trump approached. The Secret Service agents exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't part of the planned route. The crowd's reaction created waves of sound that bounced off the arena's walls. Some sections burst into USA chants, while others responded with competing voices. Smartphones lit up the darkness like a sea of fireflies as thousands tried to capture what was unfolding. Even the commentary team fell silent, unsure what to make of this unscripted moment. Trump, wearing his signature navy blue suit and red tie, climbed the steps to the octagon with surprising agility for his age. The championship belt caught the arena lights and gleamed as the champion turned to face him. Everyone expected the usual handshake and photo opportunity, the kind of moment they'd seen countless times before. In the front rows, seasoned fight photographers who thought they'd seen it all lowered their cameras in surprise. UFC officials huddled together, rapidly discussing this deviation from the evening's carefully planned schedule. The champion's coaching team watched intently from their corner, just as uncertain as everyone else about what was about to unfold. The air felt thick with anticipation as Trump reached the center of the octagon. He adjusted his red tie, a familiar gesture that somehow seemed different in the fighting cage's bright lights. The champion extended their hand for the expected handshake, following the usual protocol of these moments. But what happened next would turn this from a standard VIP appearance into one of the most talked-about moments in UFC history. Nobody could have predicted what Trump had planned. Not the Secret Service agents, who looked increasingly uncomfortable, not Dana White, who watched from cage-side with an unreadable expression, and certainly not the thousands of fans who held their breath, waiting to see what would happen in this most unusual of encounters. The reaction from the crowd hit like a wave as Trump reached the center of the octagon. Some fans jumped to their feet, while others leaned forward in their seats, not wanting to miss a moment. The big screens above showed the scene from every angle. The former president standing face to face with the champion who just defended their title in spectacular fashion. The usual post-fight buzz had transformed into something entirely different. You could hear the mix of voices bouncing off the walls, some cheering, others expressing their surprise, all of them adding to the electric atmosphere that filled Madison Square Garden. Even the veteran cameramen, who'd seen everything in their years of covering fights, kept their lenses fixed on the scene, knowing they were capturing something unique. Trump acknowledged the crowd with his familiar wave, turning slowly to take in the entire arena. The championship belt caught the light as the champions shifted their weight, still running on adrenaline from their victory just minutes before. Their face showed a mix of respect and curiosity. This wasn't how these appearances usually went. The Secret Service agents stood at the ready, their earpieces crackling with rapid communications. One of them took a half step forward when Trump moved suddenly, but stopped as it became clear what was happening. The former president was doing something nobody expected. He was sizing up the champion like a fighter would. The The commentary team found their voices again, trying to describe what they were seeing to millions watching at home. In all my years of covering fights, one began, I've never seen anything quite like this. The champion's corner team exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of amusement and disbelief. Then came the moment that would flood social media within seconds. Trump removed his suit jacket, carefully handing it to a wide-eyed UFC official who stood nearby. The crowd's volume doubled instantly. Some fans were recording on their phones, others were nudging their friends in disbelief, and a few were standing on their seats to get a better view. The champion, showing the kind of quick thinking that had earned them the belt, read the room perfectly. Instead of staying formal, they relaxed their stance and gestured welcomingly, playing along with whatever was about to happen. Their genuine smile helped transform what could have been an awkward moment into something that felt almost natural. Even Dana White, who'd seen everything in the fight game, couldn't hide his surprise. He stood at the edge of the cage, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth as he watched the scene unfold. The UFC president knew better than anyone that some of the best moments in fighting come completely unscripted. As Trump loosened his signature red tie, the atmosphere in the arena shifted from surprise to anticipation. Nobody knew exactly what was coming next, but everyone could feel they were about to witness something they'd be talking about for years to come. The moment Trump dropped into a fighter's stance, the arena fell into a stunned silence. His feet spread shoulder-width apart, hands raised in an amateur boxing position. It was clear he'd been watching fights long enough to pick up the basics. The champion's eyebrows shot up, but their professional instincts kicked in immediately. The silence lasted only seconds before the crowd erupted. Phone cameras flashed everywhere, catching what would soon become one of the most viral moments in combat sports history. The Secret Service agents looked at each other, clearly wondering if this crossed any security protocols, but held their positions. A UFC official quickly passed a microphone to Trump, who took it with the timing of someone who'd spent years in front of cameras. His voice boomed through the arena speakers, cutting through the noise of the crowd. $5 million, he announced, to veterans charities if you'll show me some moves right here, right now. The champion's face lit up. This wasn't just a publicity stunt anymore. This was a chance to do something meaningful. They gestured for a microphone of their own, playing to the crowd with the skill of a seasoned performer. The fans loved it, their cheers growing louder with each passing second. The cage-side medical team exchanged glances. Nobody had ever needed to check vitals during a post-fight presidential appearance before. The champion's trainer leaned against the cage, shaking his head with an amused smile. In all his years of coaching, this was definitely a first. Up in the commentary booth, the team had given up trying to maintain their usual professional distance. They were laughing, trading excited comments about the unexpected turn of events. One of them mentioned how this would probably end up in the UFC's highlight reel for years to come. The energy in Madison Square Garden shifted from surprise to playful. Even those who'd been booing earlier couldn't help but get caught up in the moment. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about something much simpler. The universal language of sports bringing people together in an unexpected way. The champion took a step toward Trump, showing the same careful control they displayed in their fight just minutes earlier. They gestured to the former president's stance, already shifting into teaching mode. The crowd held its breath, phones still recording, as one of the most unusual training sessions in UFC history was about to begin. Each movement the champion made was deliberate, treating this impromptu lesson with the same respect they'd give any student in their gym. Trump's face showed genuine concentration. Whatever people thought of him, in this moment, he was just someone eager to learn from a master of their craft. The impromptu training session began with the champion gently correcting Trump's stance. The former president shifted his weight, following instructions with surprising focus. Around the octagon, phones kept recording as history unfolded in an unexpected way. The champion demonstrated a basic jab, their movements smooth and controlled. Trump watched intently, then mimicked the motion. His red tie swayed with each movement, drawing chuckles from the crowd. The Secret Service agents had relaxed slightly, though their eyes never stopped scanning the arena. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Show him the knockout punch," which got a wave of laughter. The champions shook their head with a smile, keeping things simple and safe. They moved on to footwork basics, showing how to pivot and maintain balance. The big screens showed close-ups of Trump's face as he concentrated on the instructions. Gone was the political figure. Here was just someone trying to learn something new. The champion pointed to his elbow position, made a small adjustment, and nodded approvingly when he got it right. Dana White watched from cage side, arms crossed and grinning. He'd seen plenty of celebrities in the octagon, but this was different. The crowd seemed to forget about their political differences, united in witnessing this bizarre, but somehow perfect moment. A UFC photographer caught what would become the night's most shared image: Trump throwing a practice jab while the champion watched with an encouraging smile. The arena lights caught the championship belt's gold plates, adding an extra sparkle to the scene. The champion's coaching instincts had taken over completely. They demonstrated a defensive stance, explaining with hand gestures that even the strongest fighters need to know how to protect themselves. Trump nodded seriously, adjusting his position according to the instructions. The commentary team had given up trying to describe the scene normally. "This is why combat sports are different," one said. "Where else would you see something like this?" The others agreed, noting how the pure spirit of martial arts was shining through politics and controversy. The atmosphere in Madison Square Garden had transformed completely. What started as a tense moment had become something almost magical. A reminder that at its core, fighting is about learning, respect, and the human connection that happens when people share knowledge. The impromptu training session began with the champion gently correcting Trump's stance. The former president shifted his weight, following instructions with surprising focus. Around the oct, social media was already exploding as someone shouted, "Let's see a takedown." The champion laughed and shook their head. Some moves were definitely off the training menu. Trump had worked up a light sweat now, his face showing the kind of focus usually reserved for campaign speeches. The 2-minute mark approached, and the impromptu lesson shifted to defensive moves. The champion showed how to block basic strikes, moving with the careful precision of someone teaching a complete beginner. Trump followed along, his tie now slightly askew, but his enthusiasm unchanged. Phones kept recording as the champion demonstrated proper breathing techniques. "This is the foundation of everything in fighting," they explained into the microphone. The crowd had settled into an attentive silence, as if they were all part of this unusual master class. The Secret Service team had formed a loose circle around the cage, their expressions a mix of duty and amusement. One of them couldn't help but crack a smile when Trump successfully completed a basic defensive combination. The champion gave an approving nod, treating their student with the same respect they'd show anyone eager to learn. Up in the nosebleed seats, fans who'd paid for their tickets expecting just another UFC event were getting an unexpected bonus show. People who'd been arguing about politics earlier were now discussing fighting techniques, pointing out details of the champion's teaching style. The arena screens captured every moment, splitting between wide shots and close-ups. You could see the genuine interaction between teacher and student. No politics, no controversy, just the pure exchange of knowledge that martial arts has always been about. Dana White had pulled out his own phone by now, knowing this footage would be golden. The champion's corner team watched with professional interest, occasionally nodding at their fighters' teaching choices. This was turning into a masterclass in how to handle an unexpected situation. The champion kept the instruction light but meaningful, showing respect for both the sport and their impromptu student. When Trump picked up a particular movement quickly, they offered genuine praise. The crowd responded to each small victory with cheers, caught up in the strangeness and beauty of the moment. As the session started winding down, there was a sense in the arena that they'd all witnessed something special. Not just a publicity stunt or a political moment, but a genuine human connection forged through the universal language of sport. Again, phones kept recording as history unfolded in an unexpected way. The champion demonstrated a basic jab, their movements smooth and controlled. Trump watched intently, then mimicked the motion. His red tie swayed with each movement, drawing chuckles from the crowd. The Secret Service agents had relaxed slightly, though their eyes never stopped scanning the arena. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Show him the knockout punch," which got a wave of laughter. The champions shook their head with a smile, keeping things simple and safe. They moved on to footwork basics, showing how to pivot and maintain balance. The big screens showed close-ups of Trump's face as he concentrated on the instructions. Gone was the political figure. Here was just someone trying to learn something new. The champion pointed to his elbow position, made a small adjustment, and nodded approvingly when he got it right. Dana White watched from cage side, arms crossed and grinning. He'd seen plenty of celebrities in the octagon, but this was different. The crowd seemed to forget about their political differences, united in witnessing this bizarre but somehow perfect moment. A UFC photographer caught what would become the night's most shared image: Trump throwing a practice jab while the champion watched with an encouraging smile. The arena lights caught the championship belt's gold plates, adding an extra sparkle to the scene. The champion's coaching instincts had taken over completely. They demonstrated a defensive stance, explaining with hand gestures that even the strongest fighters need to know how to protect themselves. Trump nodded seriously, adjusting his position according to the instructions. The commentary team had given up trying to describe the scene normally. "This is why combat sports are different," one said. "Where else would you see something like this?" The others agreed, noting how the pure spirit of martial arts was shining through politics and controversy. The media frenzy was instant. News alerts started popping up on people's phones even before the training session ended. The headlines wrote themselves. "Former President takes MMA lessons in MSG." Video clips spread across social platforms faster than anyone could track. Inside the arena, the unique moment was winding down. Trump's breathing had steadied, and he straightened his tie with a satisfied look. The champion held up Trump's hand like a referee after a win, drawing another huge reaction from the crowd. Both of them knew they just created a moment that would be talked about for years. The UFC's social media team was working overtime, their fingers flying over their phones. Every major sports network was already requesting footage rights. The clips were getting millions of views within minutes. The brief lesson had somehow captured something that went beyond sports or politics. Television commentators scrambled to find the right words to describe what they just witnessed. "In my 20 years of covering fights," one veteran broadcaster said, "I've never seen anything quite like this." The instant replays showed details everyone had missed in real time. The champion's patient teaching style, Trump's determined focus. The champion's team was already fielding calls from morning talk shows. Everyone wanted to know how this unplanned moment came together. The fighter's manager had his phone pressed to one ear while typing frantically on another. This was the kind of publicity you couldn't plan for. Down at cage side, people who'd been in the fight game for decades were shaking their heads and smiling. They knew they'd just witnessed something that would become part of UFC folklore. Dana White was already thinking about how to include this in future promotional materials. The Secret Service team finally relaxed their stance as Trump prepared to leave the octagon. They'd been professional throughout, but even they couldn't help exchanging impressed looks. Their protectee had managed to surprise everyone yet again. Sports journalists in the press area were furiously typing, trying to capture the atmosphere in words. How do you describe a moment when politics, sports, and pure human connection all collided in the most unexpected way? The story was writing itself, but finding the right tone wasn't easy. The most shared photos showed the genuine smiles on both faces, teacher and student caught up in the pure joy of martial arts. No agenda, no controversy, just two people sharing a moment that somehow managed to transcend everything else. By midnight, the training video had gone viral worldwide. News channels played the clip on repeat, while social media turned key moments into memes. The champion's gentle corrections and Trump's focused learning became instant classics online. Veterans organizations started reaching out within hours. The promised $5 million donation was already making waves, with multiple groups preparing proposals for how to use the funds. The Champions team confirmed that Trump's office had already initiated the transfer process. Fighting gyms across the country reported a surge in interest. Something about seeing a 77-year-old former president willing to learn basic techniques sparked curiosity in people who'd never considered trying martial arts. The Champions' own gym received hundreds of membership inquiries overnight. Sports analysts had a field day breaking down the technical aspects of the brief lesson. They praised the Champions' teaching approach, keeping things simple, focusing on safety, and showing respect for both the sport and the student. Fighting magazines were already planning special editions. The UFC's marketing team couldn't have scripted it better. Clips of the moment played perfectly on both sports and news networks. Even people who'd never watched MMA were sharing the video, commenting on how surprisingly human the whole interaction felt. The Champions' popularity soared in unexpected ways. Their patient teaching style and professional handling of the situation impressed viewers across political lines. Interview requests poured in from around the world, everyone wanting to hear about those 2 minutes in the octagon. Training centers reported calls from older adults asking about beginner classes. "If he can do it at his age," became a common phrase. The Champions' approach to teaching a complete beginner was being used as an example in martial arts schools. Madison Square Garden staff shared stories of what they witnessed. The security team, used to handling tense political moments, talked about how the mood in the arena had shifted from division to unity during those few minutes. It was rare to see an entire crowd so completely captivated. Social media couldn't decide what to focus on: the technical aspects of the lesson, the unexpected humility of both participants, or the perfect timing of it all. Every new angle shared online showed something different, keeping the moment fresh in people's minds. A week after the viral moment, the impact kept growing. The UFC's viewership numbers showed a significant spike, with new audiences discovering the sport through this unexpected gateway. The Champions' social media following had doubled, with fans particularly interested in their teaching methods. The veterans' charities had already started putting the donation to good use. Support programs expanded, reaching more veterans than ever before. The Champion made surprise visits to several veterans' centers, teaching basic self-defense classes and sharing stories about that famous night. Late-night shows couldn't get enough of the footage. Every host had their own take, but they all agreed on one thing. This was a rare moment when everyone forgot about politics and just enjoyed watching someone learn something new. Comedy writers had a field day with the image of the former president's red tie swaying during practice jabs. Sports documentarians started working on special features. They interviewed everyone from the cage-side photographers to the arena security staff, each person adding their unique perspective to the story. The UFC's own behind-the-scenes crew had captured angles nobody had seen yet. Training gyms across the country reported a surprising trend: older adults signing up for beginner classes, many mentioning the viral moment as their inspiration. The Champions' patient teaching approach became a model for instructors dealing with new students. The Secret Service team even got their share of attention. Their professional handling of the unexpected situation earned praise from security experts. Photos of their carefully maintained formation around the octagon, while staying out of the way of the impromptu lesson, became training materials. The Champions' reputation in the fighting world grew stronger. Other fighters praised their ability to handle such an unusual situation with grace and professionalism. Young fighters studied how they managed to keep the focus on martial arts while respecting both the sport and their impromptu student. Madison Square Garden added photos from the night to their historical display. The moment joined other legendary events in the arena's rich history. Tour guides now included the story in their presentations, pointing out exactly where it happened. Even martial arts tournaments saw changes, with more emphasis placed on the teaching aspects of the sport. The champion's ability to break down complex movements into simple instructions became a talking point in coaching seminars. 1 month after the famous octagon lesson, the impact continued rippling through both sports and society. The champion's charity foundation, boosted by the $5 million donation, had launched new programs specifically designed for veterans interested in martial arts training. The viral footage found new life in unexpected places. Business schools used it as a case study in handling unexpected situations gracefully. Leadership courses highlighted the champion's teaching style as an example of effective communication under pressure. The UFC created a new segment in their Legacy Museum dedicated to unexpected moments in the sport. The display included the champion's gloves from that night, alongside photos capturing key moments of the impromptu lesson. Visitors often spend extra time at this exhibit, discussing their own memories of watching it live or online. Sports networks had turned the moment into a regular feature in their greatest UFC moments compilations. What made it special wasn't just the unusual pairing of teacher and student, but how it showed martial arts' ability to bridge any divide. The champion's next fight drew record viewership. People who'd never watched MMA before tuned in, curious about the fighter who'd handled such an unusual situation with such grace. The pre-fight coverage spent almost as much time discussing the teaching moment as it did analyzing fight strategies. Training centers reported a lasting change in their approach to new students. The champion's method of breaking down complex movements into simple, approachable steps became standard practice. "Everyone starts somewhere" became a common motto in gyms across the country. Madison Square Garden saw an increase in UFC ticket sales, with fans hoping to witness another historic moment. Tour groups regularly stopped at the octagon, guides explaining how an unplanned moment became an unforgettable part of combat sports history. The ripple effects reached beyond sports. Political commentators noted how a simple martial arts lesson had done more to bring people together than countless planned initiatives. The moment became a reference point for how shared experiences could bridge seemingly impossible gaps. As the year drew to a close, the consensus was clear. Sometimes the most meaningful moments are the ones nobody sees coming. The night a former president decided to learn some basic fighting moves had somehow turned into a lesson about human connection, respect, and the enduring power of sports to unite people.